Most of whom are believed to work for the CIA. It came from an Italian court, one prosecutor saying this verdict, quote, shows governments and institutions that the fight against terrorism has to be carried out in accordance with the law. There are no shortcuts, end quote. Let's go straight to CNN's international security correspondent Paula Newton in London for more on this story. Give us some background, Paula. What happened?
Well, 22 former CIA operatives and one U.S. Air Force, Colonel Wolf, are now convicted felons in Italy. They saying now that they deny any of those allegations, but what they are linked to are taking a suspected terrorist, Abu Omar, off the streets of Milan in 2003 and then taking him to Egypt to be tortured. He is the one who has brought these allegations and this case into court. Now, human rights groups say that, in fact, this is the first case of its kind, and Italian prosecutors, as you just quoted, really taking this case to the limit and saying, look, even though you're fighting the war on terror, a country's laws must be obeyed. Wolf, the Americans in this case, really denying any involvement, and they feel that they've been made to be the scapegoats here. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter. As of right now, Wolf, they are international fugitives, and if they try and leave the United States, they risk arrest. Wolf?
What's been the reaction from the U.S. government so far, Paula?
Well, it's been very interesting. You know, earlier today we did have reaction from the Pentagon, you know, saying that in terms of jurisdiction, they were disappointed with the verdict, with the colonel. But in terms of the other 22, the CIA, again, holding up the no comment, the same thing they have been doing for more than 3 years in this case. Goes without saying, through her lawyer, we spoke to one of those convicted to 5 years, Sabrina De Souza. She feels she's angered. She says she feels like she's been stabbed in the back. And she has a warning for any U.S. citizen working abroad saying, look, your government will not back you up.
Paula Newton, thanks very much. Let's bring in our senior legal analyst, Jeffrey Tubin, for some analysis of what's going on. Practically speaking, these Americans who are all in the United States right now, presumably, what does this mean for them?
Well, they certainly can't go to Italy, that's for sure. And the question of how or whether they will be pursued in other countries, I think, has to be considered an open question at this point. This is a real criminal conviction in a country where we tend to honor reciprocal legal arrangements. So they are in no jeopardy as long as they are inside the United States. But if they were to leave, they are potentially at risk for being jailed and brought to Italy.
Because even if they went to a third country like England, let's say, or France, Interpol could have a warrant out for their arrest. They've been convicted by an Italian court.
That's why this is so troubling. It would be one thing if they only had to stay out of Italy, but because of Interpol, because of the reciprocal nature of these agreements, they are potentially at risk almost anywhere they go.
What are the ramifications going forward for the CIA, indeed for other U.S. officials?
Well, working for the CIA is risky because one of the things you do when you are a CIA agent, at least in part, is break the law of other countries. You break and enter. You pay bribes. Now, often CIA agents have what they call a liaison relationship with the host government. And here, Italy is an ally. You would think there would be a successful liaison relationship. Here, the system broke down. It remains somewhat of a mystery how. Did the Italian government go back on some agreements? Did the CIA go beyond what the Italian government agreed to? Was this a rogue operation? All those questions remain unknown, but this just underlines the risk of doing this kind of work overseas for the CIA.
Let's talk about this Supreme Court case, a fascinating Supreme Court case. The justice is now hearing arguments. There's an allegation that prosecutors knew they were fabricating evidence against defendants, making it all up. They were sentenced, spent 20 years in prison, and they knew the whole thing was wrong. And the question now before the Supreme Court, are these individuals who were in jail, wrongfully imprisoned, can they go ahead and sue the prosecutors?
You know, Wolf, this has become a bigger and bigger issue as the Innocence Project has used DNA and other attempts to show how many innocent people there actually are in prison. And they've served, many of them, very long terms. And the question always comes up, can't you sue the prosecutor who framed you, who did something really awful to make you lose all those years of your life? What the Supreme Court has said previously is prosecutors are immune from lawsuit for anything they do inside the courtroom. Anything you do or say as a prosecutor in court you can't be sued for. The issue in this case is, what if, before you go to court, you set up a corrupt deal to prosecute someone unlawfully? What if you frame someone by setting up the testimony in advance? Is that act immune from civil lawsuit? And the justices actually seemed pretty sympathetic to the plaintiffs in this case, to the wrongfully convicted guy.
The Obama administration's position on this is fascinating.
Well, you know, the Obama administration may be perceived by a lot of people as liberal, but they are the government, and the government tends to stand by the government. And here, in this case, they are supporting the county in Iowa that says these prosecutors are immune from suit. The Obama administration, like the Bush administration, thinks that civil lawsuits should not be hanging over the head of prosecutors, and they want this lawsuit thrown out. But even some conservative justices seem pretty suspicious of that
the Solicitor
argument.
General, Elena Kagan, writing a brief saying, you know what, throw it out, agreeing with the Bush administration. Very interesting development. Thanks very much, Jeff, for that.
Okay, well,